Learn this afternoon's latest player exit news involving HUDSON-ODOI in Arsenal, Christian Pulisic and Manchester United, as well as Ten Hag wanting to sign ZIYECH for Man United. To end things, I'll be discussing the news coming out that players are unhappy with Tuchel's system, hence why so many players want to leave, and I want to give my thoughts and opinions on this story. So, ton of things to break down. Before we get into anything, let me get one big plug out of the way first. Today's video is brought to you by friends of the channel in OneFootball. OneFootball is the app to have for every football fan due to the numerous amounts of useful features that will make your footballing experience a lot more streamlined and a lot more easier. For me, my favorite feature is the profile tab. It's an easy way for me to get all the latest news, stats, fixture news, plus so much info surrounding our club. As you guys can see, these are some of the latest stories that are breaking today. We have quotes from Timo Werner, we have news on ZIYECH, we have news on Pulisic, plus much more. Of course, get an idea of where we are on the table and get prepared for our next fixtures coming up, with our next game being against Leeds, of course on Sunday at 2 PM. It'll be a very big game. Lots of very competitive games for us during the start of the season, and for me, I feel like as every game goes by, we're getting better and better and better. So if you guys want to try the app out for yourself, now is literally the perfect time to do so. It's absolutely free, and I guarantee you will use this daily and you'll find it very useful. So my friends, you'll find a link below in the description. So let's start with things and let's focus on ZIYECH and Man United. For me, it seems like Man United are finally getting a dose of common sense, and they're realizing maybe it makes sense to go for a player that was a key man for the new manager we brought in for the start of the season. As long as there is no crazy valuation on ZIYECH's head, it does seem like they are ready now to do business with us and do business with ZIYECH and his lawyers as well to get a deal over the line. I think for me, this is probably common sense for all parties at this point in time. There just isn't a role for ZIYECH in the team. As this video goes on, you guys, and go right to the end, I'm going to break down my thoughts on this consistent pattern we're seeing now of, players showing disapproval at how they're being used and feeling like they're not the right fit for the system currently being used at the club right now. But, moving on, of course, though, ZIYECH was a sensation under Ten Hag. I've seen so many games during his time at Ajax, especially in the Champions League, and Man United could definitely do with a profile that has that ability to play dangerous balls and crosses inside the box to find Cristiano Ronaldo, because in my opinion, I see Ronaldo is probably most likely going to stay at United because no club wants to sign him right now, and that kind of is like the curse of Manchester United at this point in time. Regardless, with Manchester United now bringing in a style of football that most likely suits ZIYECH as he worked under their new manager, it makes so much sense. It reminds me of quotes made after that, infamous 4-4 draw with Ajax in the Champions League, where, after the game when ZIYECH scored that absolute golazo against us, he mentioned the fact that he liked the style of play that we played under Frank Lampard because there was quite a few similarities tactically with how Ajax played as well too. And maybe that's no surprise why we saw such an epic attacking game of football that led to 4 goals. Now, in my opinion, it was always a shame that we never really got to see much of ZIYECH and Reece James playing down the right hand side together, but most times we've got that rare glimpse of these guys together. We have seen pretty special things. Now, for me, do I think that ZIYECH is overrated and not good enough? No. I think he's just suffering from the fact that there's no role for him in the team. He's a right winger, that's how he plays. Some of the arguments that players have to be able to be ready to play in every position just doesn't really make much sense for me, and I don't really see how most of these examples really work in the game today. But if we can get some good money for ZIYECH, I think it makes sense for all parties right now to do so, because with all the money we're spending, we need to balance the books a little bit, and we need to start bringing in some money as well to help with things. Now, Ten Hag is a massive fan of ZIYECH, and as he said prior during their time at Ajax, whenever resistance is at its highest, ZIYECH shines. We have many players who can create, but in the final third, no one is as good as Hakim. He's a classic individualist, in the good sense of the words. You need him to make the difference, and at times, you need him in the team structure too. He can see the team cohesion and he sees the bigger picture. I think with some of the players Man United have right now, I feel like a player like ZIYECH makes quite a lot of sense. So let's hope that a move gets finalized and we sell ZIYECH to bring in some money. So now let's move on to the next story. So right now we remain in Old Trafford, and let's discuss the big news that drops involving United interest in Christian Pulisic. Now, this report came out from Andy Mitten and essentially is saying that United are keeping an eye out on Pulisic in case they make a loan attempt. Now this follows the patterns from many clubs domestically and across Europe, where so many of our talented players now could be made available on loan as this window comes to an end. Now for me, Pulisic's only made one start coming off as a sub against Everton, and I think realistically, similar to ZIYECH and Hudson and other guys like this, it just doesn't really suit the style of football under Thomas Tuchel. And the interesting thing is, I used to say this back in the day, back during their time together at Dortmund, Pulisic was more of a super sub for Tuchel compared to being a player playing week in and week out. So it kind of follows the same trajectory, and I think for me, it simply comes down to the profile in which Pulisic plays in. Now you know that with America featuring the World Cup, Pulisic, who is their key man, wants to be as sharp and fit as available to represent his nation. Back in 2019, he cost us £58 million, and you'd imagine that at the time we beat off so much competition to sign him, the plan sold to him and his dad was completely different to what reality is at this point in time. Now Pulisic has 2 years left on his existing deal. You'd imagine that he won't be signing a new contract extension here, so I think a loan move makes sense, knowing that he'll be ready for the World Cup. Hopefully he has a great World Cup too, which puts his name back in the market, which hopefully gives us an opportunity to make, decent money from his sale in the future. Because for me, I do feel like even though he is a talented player, with where we are right now, he just doesn't really suit or fit us at this point in time. And maybe he could have, but unfortunately at the big clubs, you're not going to get a run of like 10 games in a row to build that form and to build that fitness. Now, why has Pulisic struggled so much under Thomas Tuchel? Thank you to The Athletic for making my life a lot easier. As you guys can see on screen right now, these are the average positions taken up by Pulisic during the 1920 season, where he absolutely scored a lot of goals, compared to seasons after that. As is quite obvious, he played 79% of his games playing as a left winger. And under Thomas Tuchel, we're seeing his minutes distributed at right wing back and as a cam as well too. And you're not seeing anything on the left wing. Why is that? Well, that's because we have wing backs now that take up those wide positions. We don't use left wingers, we don't use right wingers. Tuchel has said this himself many a time. We use cams instead, who take up positions in the half spaces. That's how we play now. And Pulisic is not a attacking mids. He is not a cam. He is a winger. He prospers playing in the transition. He prospers receiving the ball out wide, where he ideally has a fullback alongside him, where you see his explosiveness in like the first 20, 30, 40 meters, that close control, and his ability to take on this man and create space. We just don't play like that anymore. And if the argument is that Pulisic should still be able to perform well playing outside of his best position, I just think maybe that's a bit of a misguided argument in my opinion. And I think this kind of sums up most of our attacking players now under Thomas Tuchel. It's not his fault, and I hope you guys go right to the end to hear my thoughts and opinions behind why so many are unhappy with the system. But now that Tuchel has signed more players in his molds, now that he's been given that license to get players that suit how we play, after seeing that Spurs game, I think that's given us all a realization behind, okay, this is where we're evolving to. And last season, I was more critical of certain decisions under Tuchel, especially in games when we were playing versus teams who just only parked the bus, because even though I understood that he's trying to build his main way of playing, it felt like we had so many players still in the team that probably could have benefited from having maybe a different way of playing at times against an opposition that would just park the bus and sit back. But I don't care about that anymore, and the reality is that we've moved away from that. And last season and those seasons are now a thing of the past. For me, it makes sense that Man United would look at a player like this because they still play with wingers that like to receive out wide. For me, if you can get a run of 5 to 10 consistent games, then I have a feeling his game will naturally come back. But I guess for us, knowing the fact that mainly his injury record has not been too great, and the fact that there's no role for him, it's a natural case that his valuation will continue to fall and fall and fall. So for me, a good loan plus money in the end can be better suited to strengthening the overall team. Anyway, how do you guys feel about Pulisic leaving? Are you upset? Are you okay with things? And how do you feel about Man United showing so much interest in our players? So now we move on to more exit news, and let's discuss the updates surrounding HUDSON-ODOI and more loan offers, as now Arsenal surprisingly are showing a lot of interest in potentially signing the player this window, alongside Manchester United as well too. Now, I find it quite interesting. We're hearing news that Pepe may be going on loan to Nice back in Ligue 1. He just hasn't really worked out for them whatsoever. And naturally, Arsenal want top quality competition to, just keep that squad strong and healthy. Currently, the bookies have Newcastle and Dortmund as the favourites at this point in time. And with HUDSON-ODOI, the thing that makes him even more attractive now is that we all know he's on 150k a week, but the club have accepted the fact that for him to be able to get a top quality loan move, they'll have to subsidise his wages, which naturally makes him even more attractive to many teams across Europe. So I'd imagine that him and his team are literally getting offers left, right and centre every single day. It's going to be a very busy period, and I just hope that him and his team find the best possible option for him to start to show some of that potential and get those consistent minutes. In my opinion, I prefer Dortmund. I just think that with how they play Champions League football, as well as playing in a top league, if he makes himself a big name player there, I'm confident he can come back here and make something happen. I don't like the idea of potentially strengthening Arsenal, and at the same time, going to Arsenal means he has competition alongside players they actually own compared to a player they'd only sign on loan. Martinelli is much better now. Saka is growing as well too. Odegaard, they have many wide options at this point in time, and I just think that when we know that the club don't want any options to buy inserted in any loan moves, for me, I'm just a bit worried by the fact that would Arsenal really care to use him over a player that they actually own? I'm not too sure. Now, Todd Boehly has persuaded HUDSON-ODOI to not want to leave him on a permanent, which says a lot about how he's still viewed and recognised across football. I mean, this is a top class player, and even though we aren't seeing that dribbling ability just yet, I think for him to show that he needs consistent game time, which means that even if he plays badly, he still has to play next week, which you can't do at clubs that are looking to win things. But with how he moves the ball, his playmaking, his passing, the accuracy in which he can play assists, I mean, this guy has the ability to probably become a world-class player if his body still helps him and if he's able to find ways to bring that direct dribbling back to his game. Now, Man United are now showing interest as well in HUDSON-ODOI. Of course, if they sign any of our players on loan, they can only sign one of them. And in my opinion, it probably makes more sense for them to sign HUDSON-ODOI over Pulisic. I think they have Rashford that can bring that 1v1 directness. And I think when you have someone like Ronaldo, who probably won't be leaving, HUDSON-ODOI will find him. He'll play the crosses. He'll do the right things at the right time in the final third. He plays a real sense of maturity, which can be taken for granted because we want to see maybe younger players being a lot more youthful. But HUDSON-ODOI plays with a grown man's brain, and I just think he makes more sense there. And I like the idea of Hudson on the left and Sancho on the right. I think, something like that could be quite nice. But still though, let's see what happens in the end. But HUDSON-ODOI right now is a very popular man. Tuchel, Boehly know his potential, and let's hope that he gets the right move so we can see him back next season. And now to end things, I want to give my thoughts and opinions behind something that's been quite frequent recently, and that's players being unhappy under the system. Now, it's been something reported numerous times, not even today. It felt like the right time to address that. And for me, it's quite logical as to why, and it simply comes down to the fact that the system just does not suit these players. But let me actually break down why this is the case. Is this Tuchel's fault? Absolutely not. And it's simply this: when you sign a manager, you sign them for their footballing philosophy and their principles. In this game, you don't see managers chopping and changing their philosophy every single season. They'll make tweaks if they don't have the right personnel, but the core and the ideology of how a manager is how they will remain right to the end. So I can't be expecting Thomas Tuchel, who is known for playing a positional, high-pressing possession game of football, to then change things up to being a lot more open, using a 4-3-3. I've had to accept that. As I said earlier, last season when he didn't have all the players at his disposal, I felt like maybe he could be a bit more flexible. But I think after seeing that pre-season friendly against Arsenal, where listen, there were other factors working against us, like the lack of fitness. But when we play a lot more open, we just look terrible. So, that just really emphasizes even more that Tuchel is not that manager. And when you hire these managers, you have to fully back and support the way of playing. And that's what Todd Boehly is doing this summer. Unless a manager is able to build an entire squad in his entire image, which does happen but is very rare, the reality is that some players will be happy and some players will be unhappy, unfortunately. I mean, even before Tuchel came, we saw the opposite happening with guys like your Jorginhos, Covers, Alonsos, etc. being unhappy working under Lampard because their best way of playing wasn't able to be done because Lampard wanted to play a lot more open, a lot more direct, and a lot more vertical, and that just didn't suit their game. Now, as we've seen throughout this news video, when you don't have your right wing spot and left wing spot available, how are you going to actually play your best football? ZIYECH, known for his switchballs and his ability to receive out wide and have that creative license to roam in fields, put crosses inside the box, play the overlapping pass, or take shots from those areas. Pulisic is a guy that receives out wide as a winger. That's how he plays his best confident football. HUDSON-ODOI does best receiving out wide too. And Tuchel, of course, tries to find ways to bring their qualities to the team. But unfortunately, they don't have that type of body where they can be playing on both halves, attacking on one side and coming back to defend as well too. We saw it with HUDSON-ODOI, ZIYECH and Pulisic to middling effects, and the reality is it just doesn't really work. Now I keep seeing things like, how is this Tuchel's fault when these guys are missing simple chances, but I think that's, I don't know, it feels a bit too simplistic in my opinion. Of course, if you can't play your best football, how are you going to have that confidence to play? I think we forget that they're human beings, no matter how much money they're making. You have that confidence when you can rely upon the system, knowing that it fully gets the best out of your skill set and the way you play is fully maximized. If you don't get those types of things, of course, and you're doing alien things where you have to tweak your game, it means that you're never really going to be as good as you probably should be. As you guys can see on screen, these are quotes from Timo Werner confirming the fact that the system under Tuchel just didn't suit his personal style of play, hence why he's returned back to RB Leipzig and already is finding the back of the goal again. And for me, to end this, it simply comes down to this. Managers have their own personal DNAs. Tuchel's, your Klopps, your Lampards, your Peps, your every manager, they have their unique way of wanting to have their teams play. That's why they work upon their methods over their coaching careers. That's why they find their own independent style and way of how they want their teams to play. And they stick with that. You don't see managers playing attacking football one season, then defensive football the next. It just don't happen. When you have players that operate in space, when we play a different style of football that relies upon positional play, possession, control, pressing from the front, it's obvious that they're not going to do well. So in my opinion, it makes sense to loan them out now, and it makes sense to sell them on and receive some fees for them. I don't think they're bad, but I think as I've just grown up and consumed so much football throughout my entire life, now naturally, I just feel like, okay, this is how the laws of the game work, and it's okay. So you guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoy. Please share your thoughts and opinions below. And on that note, I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.